Hello, everybody. It's another episode of Let's Talk That's Good Broncos. I'm sitting here with Zach Seegers, Will Keys. Let's get right into the show. Well, guys, a lot happened since our last podcast. The Broncos are sitting with a winning record, one behind the Chiefs since the last time we recorded. I just literally can't believe we're one game behind the Chiefs. It's unbelievable. But before we get into that, I want to get into some of the news. Dulcich is back from IR. I feel like he's the forgotten Bronco. I don't even remember Greg Dulcich anymore. Are you guys excited that Greg is coming back?
Yeah. I mean, I'm excited about it. I don't know what he'll do. I mean, I was excited the last time he came back, and I feel like he played 5 snaps and then re-injured the hamstring. And Sean Payton said today he's flying around, seeing all these hamstring specialists all over the country. Think you could view that optimistically and go, hey, he's getting the best treatment possible all over the place. Or you could maybe view that, I'm viewing it anxiously, going, why are you having to see a million different hamstring specialists all over the country? That tells me you've got a scary problem with the hamstring. So I don't know. It's good to have him back. I don't know how long he's going to be back. I don't know. The fingers crossed. I think that's all you can say.
Wasn't there that report, I think it was from Mike Kliss, that Dulcich had to change his gait, the way that he walks or runs, which it feels like it's a very short amount of time.
Yeah.
To change one of the most fundamental parts of being alive, which is moving with your legs.
That's crazy.
That's unbelievable. So they're wow. So Greg is back at practice, so they're trying to teach him how to run again.
Yeah. I'm imagining him just starting to sprint and just falling over every single time. It's and then you put the Rocky montage music to it, and finally he's going in a straight line again, catching passes.
Well, we could use it. That's one thing I can say. Troutman has been good for what you ask him of. Last week when he broke that tackle in a very important spot, my jaw hit the floor. I was like, Greg, I can't believe he just broke a tackle right then. It was an unbelievable thing. But Greg Dulcich is the best receiving tight end on this team. And if they can add him back and he can be healthy for even just the rest of the season, I think that's a big addition going into a playoff run. Zach, I know you had something to say.
Yeah, I would say just a little addition onto the gate thing. I looked it up. Kliss did put that out on November 9th. They didn't say they changed his gait, though. They said the hamstring specialists were examining his gait to see if that was the problem. If that is the problem, does seem very concerning because, like you're saying, how do you change that at this point while still remaining like an elite athlete? The other thing I'll throw out there, Alberto is not the solution to this. The Eagles have not a very deep tight end. I think they have one really good tight end and then a bunch of Jags after that. That one really good tight end, Dallas Goedert, has missed a good bit of time this season. And Albert Okwuegbunam has been targeted. Again, this is an offense that uses tight ends in the passing game a lot. Albert Okwuegbunam has been targeted once, and it was incomplete. I don't think, I'm sorry, maybe I'm crazy. I don't think he's doing anything more than Adam Troutman.
Counterpoint, do you remember that preseason game against the Rams? That was pretty cool.
Dude,
remember that game?
Yeah. Hey, remember the Juwan Winfrey game in the preseason?
That was Hall of Fame tight end.
How about some Khalfani Muhammad love? How about some D'Angelo Henderson love?
Yeah, it was all great players that didn't get a chance in the regular season.
That clearly doesn't remember his 40 either, which was a big deal at the time.
Yeah.
In other news, we have Benito and Locke not practicing. Benito, I think, more than him not practicing, I'm thinking that he's not on IR because it felt like Sean Payton was talking around his injury for a little bit. And usually when coaches do that, it's a bigger issue than not. So I'm happy to hear that he's not. And it sounds like he's going to come back this season. PJ Locke's a huge deal because of how many injuries there have been at the safety spot. How big of a loss would it be if we lost Benito or Lock, Zach?
Oh man, that's a good question. I'm gonna say I'm gonna go with Benito. Just because I think he plays the more important position. But Locke also is incredibly important, and I think you've seen what he brings. I don't think it's sheer coincidence that the defense got a lot better when he got added to the lineup. And it's had some. I don't know. I think it wasn't great the one game he missed with injury. I don't know, especially with Kajak still suspended. I thought his comments today were interesting, fair in a lot of ways, about how the NFL wants me to try and protect the other guy. How am I supposed to protect him? He has to protect himself. But also said, I'm going to more or less play how I've played since 2010. I'll try and aim lower, but I don't know what else I can do. So again, losing both will be very impactful. Benito a little more for me.
Yeah, I think you're right. Obviously, that edge rusher is a more important position, but at least they have a few guys that they can rotate there, and you can get something out of Baron Browning and Jonathan Cooper. But the depth at safety is just kind of scary. Like I start to clench up whenever I see Turner Yell back there. So I'm gonna go. Yeah, I'm gonna go with PJ Locke. I really liked just how they used him too against LA, blitzing him late in that game.
Yeah,
I just loved, like, not as like a film guy, but watching on the broadcast, just the scheme defensively. And you want all your defensive backs to be available if you're going to try to pull off something like that again.
Yeah, no, totally. I think what's interesting about this is I think, Will, I would agree with you. I think PJ Locke is a bigger one just because of who's behind him. Like, DTY scares me at this point. I don't want DTY on the field.
Or JL Skinner. It's just like a total mystery.
Yeah, exactly. And then I saw someone put out like the little safety depth chart if they miss out on PJ Locke this week. And I was like, I don't even know the other two guys on there after JL Skinner. so that's probably not a good sign. And then I think I would agree with you there, but interestingly, I think both of them are huge parts to the scheme. To your point, they both are huge parts to the blitz that Vance Joseph has been running so much. Whether it be the stunts and everything he's doing up front with Benito, where he's using that athleticism to come over the middle, or drop back in coverage, or do all the crazy stuff he's been doing. Or PJ Locke has 3 sacks in 3 weeks, so you don't want either of these guys out. And I think they're both big deals, ultimately. We do have another person joining the podcast, though. Bree is here. Bree, I'm hosting, too, just so you know. And I can't hear you.
Bree, you're muted, Mastis. I got myself there. I heard somebody say defense, so I thought I'd jump on.
I am hosting this podcast, Bree, so please chill in the bottom right corner. Anyways, Bree, who is the bigger loss? If the Broncos are missing one of them, is it Benito or Locke? Which one would you say is the bigger worry of you're missing the most?
I understand so much how the pass rush is important to this Denver Broncos defense, but when Vance Joseph is at the helm, he's sending everybody in that blitz. So I'm going to be really sad to not see PJ Locke out there if that's the case, because he's been so impactful the last couple of weeks and honestly really making a name for himself as the starter. So I may go Locke in this instance, because I think you can throw any of those big guys there to set the edge, and you're at least going to get some form of blocking that's necessary. Send all the other guys. You've got not like you have a lot, because right now the Broncos are injured in all the worst places, but I would say Locke just most indefinitely, just because what he brings, I think, in his ability to defend passes, and then also all of those sacks he's been raking up these last couple of weeks would be sorely missed. I missed the update though. Have we heard if he is now limited or if he will be questionable to go on Sunday?
I have no idea.
Neither's practicing.
And the PJ Locke one is weird, because did he not finish that game? Or do I not remember his injury?
He was in there really late.
Yeah.
I thought he finished the game. I'm with you, Joey. I absolutely thought he finished the game.
It's a really weird thing. But anyways, okay. I do want to talk to you guys about Mahomes crying as well. I specifically, we talked about this on Let's Talk Broncos a little bit, but Will, I want your opinion mostly here. What was your main takeaway of the Mahomes drama, where he was after the game shaking Josh Allen's hand, talking about that was a bogus call, and then Andy Reid and him going to the pressers also going with that? What was your take there?
It's loser behavior. It really is. And as someone who obviously has been, frustrated by the Kansas City Chiefs for half a decade now, I think it's really satisfying to see kind of the general, football watching population turn on them in real time. And the last people that should be complaining about officiating would be the Kansas City Chiefs, because, everybody talks about that hold at the end of the Super Bowl last year. And that was obviously that, which his whole thing is like, let's not make calls that impact the game in serious ways, especially, late in the fourth quarter. That was the most impactful call in Super Bowl history. It allowed them to just take a knee on the ball and then kick the game-winning field goal. And you go back in the AFC Championship game, how'd they get into field goal range against the Bengals? A pretty ticky-tacky late hit on Joseph Asai. So they have no room to talk. They're being little babies. It wasn't Josh Allen's fault, but at the same time, it's really incredible to see. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I just couldn't believe, like, the argument pretty much was, like, the argument never was he's not offside.
Right.
That was the crazy part of the whole thing. It was always, why are we calling the flags now? Like, we're the Chiefs. Why are you calling the flags now? I don't understand what's going on. It's the last 2 minutes. We're the Chiefs. Come on. I thought it was all ridiculous. Bree, I want your opinion. What did you make of the whole – what did you think of Mahomes crying, Bree?
First and foremost, I take the most entertainment out of seeing Patrick Mahomes suffer. I was going to go off camera and grab my pinata, but I actually have a pinata of his face when he lost the Super Bowl to Tom Brady against the Bucks, because I took so much solace in the fact that he was struggling at that point in time that I have it memorialized in my room. But I also wanted to say how it's almost funny to see the tide turn and how they react, because they do get such a large amount of calls in their favor. And I don't think that's a biased take from a AFC West rival fan. I think that's honestly the case, and how a lot of fans of the NFL feel, is that the Chiefs just kind of get things to go their way. So to see them kind of roll around, temper tantrum, specifically to watch Patrick Mahomes come apart at the seams, he almost is literally a pinata out there. It's the last blow that broke the candy loose, because the whining, the crying, the inevitable weird post-game presser that he's been trying to walk back because of how bad of a character inflection it created, as he's saying, like, well, just imagine when Travis Kelce's Hall of Fame. Like, are you kidding me right now? That is where you're going with this. Like, paint that picture to somebody else. It's embarrassing. And you can tell that, like, that's obviously not what he wanted to project. And I don't think it's just about the call. I think it's the fact that right now, Patrick Mahomes doesn't have the crutch in a receiver that he can rely on 100% of the time to make him look good. And however much trash they wanted to talk about Tyreek Hill, he's one of the best, if not the best, overall receivers in the NFL. And Patrick Mahomes no longer gets to throw the ball to him. So we kind of predicted that in the offseason, that he would struggle without Hill. And I think now you're just seeing he's struggling without a wide receiver in general, outside of Travis Kelce, who is also starting kind of to age himself out. Zach Seeger spoke on it a lot last season, on how you're going to see Kelce be less of a maverick for Mahomes, but now you're seeing it more this season. And I think it was just about time. Zach wasn't off. It was just a little bit of an early prediction here. We're seeing Patrick Mahomes have to do things that he's uncomfortable with, and the cutesy, tricksy little shit that he likes to pull isn't working out for him right now. And he's really upset about it. And so I'm okay with it. I kind of enjoy it.
I think it's more than the cutesy tricksy stuff, though. Even I think it's, and I think a year early on my Kelce thing, but yeah, it was one thing to move off of Tyreek Hill, an MVP candidate, when you had another MVP candidate to go alongside Mahomes. I mean, Travis, I still think Gronk's the best tight end of all time. They played at the same time, and who was getting the first team All Pros, but Travis Kelce is the second or third best tight end of all time. I mean, that's pretty good. It wasn't like he was totally broke in the weapons department last year. Pacheco's also, I think, a very good back. And now you go from, again, top 3, top 4 all time tight end to a very good tight end. And like, that's still, I still think he's good to very good, but not elite. Honestly, kind of feel the same way I do about Keenan Allen, where he used to be great and now he's very good. You know, I just, that teardrop. And when that is the only reliable aspect of your offense and it suffers a big teardrop, it's going to really damage things. Frankly, that's what I think Mahomes' frustration was about. I think he's just smart enough. And, you know, ultimately we're going to get to use this against him for the rest of his career and frankly in perpetuity. So that's kind of great that he gave the ammunition. But I don't know. I don't think they're that hung up on the officiating, if I'm being honest. I think they're just incredibly frustrated. They haven't been 8-5 in forever. They haven't had like 5 regular season losses at all in a while. Like, you got to go back to a couple years before the end of the Alex Smith reign. This is foreign territory for them. And it's not like they're a lesser team that's maximizing what they are and they're still coming up short. Like, they lose the Lions game with a crazy Kadarius Toney drop. They lose the Eagles game with a crazy Marquez Valdes-Scantling drop. They lose the Broncos game with the Mecole Hardman muff punt. Like, it's just like insanely frustrating mental errors week in and week out, either costing them games or making the games way closer than they have any right to be. And it's kind of the same cast of characters making these mistakes. And I think you can see it. Nate Tice, I think, was the one I heard pointed out, but it's true. You'll see Mahomes sometimes make these throws. A player will make a mistake on it, and you see him like kind of exhale and like compose himself. Like, I'm not going to yell at the young receiver, but what the fuck was that? And I just think that's what it was. It's just, he's been fighting uphill all season long. You finally have a really cool play, and God damn it, Kadarius Toney screwed it up again. And I think he just wanted to explode.
I loved it mostly because it was such a good play. It was such a cool play. And this wouldn't be a Broncos podcast unless we got our Chief shots in right when it was most convenient. So I had to do that. But let's get into the main component of the show, the Lions. It's Lions week. Like I said at the beginning, the Broncos are one game from the Chiefs. One game. And the Lions are probably the most tough opponent left. The question I want to ask you guys is this game winnable? The Lions have such a good record on the season. I know Zach has a really strong opinion on this, especially them losing to the Chicago Bears last week. Zach, I'm going to give it to you. Like, I feel like you might even pick the Broncos after this.
I will. I'm kind of, I was thinking about it ahead of time. I'm like, I wonder if this is going to be another Broncos sweep. The way you're setting it up, I think it won't be. But yeah, this Lions team is very vulnerable. They have, frankly, maybe been not a good team as strong. But they surely haven't been great over like the past couple months. Their defense has kind of morphed into the 2022 Lions defense. For the last 2 months, they're bottom 4 in like every EPA and success rate category. That's overall defensive EPA, overall defensive success rate, passing EPA, success rate on passing plays, just everything. And then rushing too. Awful. They're a bottom 4 pass rush in the NFL. They've got Aiden Hutchinson and Aleem McNeil and nothing else. And now they don't have Aleem McNeil for this game. The secondary was questionable coming into the season. They signed a bunch of pieces to try to cover up their questionable pieces, or even more questionable pieces from last season. Their additions have gotten injured, and those problematic corners have been thrust back into the starting lineup. That's a huge part of the reason this Lions defense has declined so drastically in recent weeks. And not only has the defense declined, because people I don't think of that Lions defense as anything special, but the offense has really declined too. There's an asterisk on that because it's really tied with Jared Goff playing in cold weather, and this game's in Detroit in a dome, so he's not going to have to deal with cold weather. But their offense is no longer elite. It's very pedestrian. In terms of like EPA per play, Arby's DM the RBSDM website that has all the EPA stuff, does a team tiers thing, where it's got like offensive EPA on the X, defensive EPA on the Y, and you can kind of see team tiers. If you're up in the upper right, you're really good. Down in the bottom left, you're really bad. And based on that metric, if you look at the last month of football, the Lions are no different from the Patriots, from the Raiders, from the Chargers. They're all in the same tier, like 1.5 tiers below the Broncos. So is this game winnable? Absolutely. They're 5-point favorites, and it's in Detroit. Home field is 3 points. I mean, it's a 2-point game on a neutral field. Absolutely, it's winnable.
Well, what do you think?
Well, really quick, I'll tell you what's winnable. A pick'em at Underdog Fantasy. Today's episode is sponsored by Underdog Fantasy, and Underdog has added Scorchers to their pick'em contests. So if you see the little tiny pepper next to a player's stat, that means it's a Scorcher pick. Add those to your normal pick'em entries to boost your payouts. Your normal max is 20xing your deposit, but depending on how many Scorchers you can add, you can up to 100x your money. And they've also added Pick'em Champions, which is live in all the best states: Alabama, Tennessee, Wyoming, and Mississippi. Players create a Pick'em entry like usual. Pick 2 to 5 players from at least 2 teams. Select your entry amount and hit submit. It's very simple. If you get the most correct picks in your contest, you win your share of the champion's prize. Sign up at Underdog Fantasy with our link below or code Let's Ride. Make your first deposit and they will match you up to $100. Once again, that is code Let's Ride, and it's right next to me. So you better see it. Let's ride.
It's Let's Ride. There's your disclaimer, guys.
Disclaimer, you've been disclaimed. Don't gamble too much.
Must be 18 plus. Anyway,
yeah.
I won some money.
Or 21 or 19. Who knows?
I won some money this past weekend on Underdog.
What'd you do?
I bet against Keenan Allen. I bet against Austin Eckler. I bet against who else? Justin Herbert. And I bet on Cortland Sutton. And I got 3 out of 4. Austin Eckler, unfortunately, got me. But I did the insured pick, so I won $75. Shout out.
There you go. There you go. I will bring you what Zach Seegers was talking about Keenan Allen this whole week. But if I bring that up, Zach will go for about 45 minutes.
Yeah. Victory lap.
We have to hold that off. Bree, is a scorcher this week that the Broncos beat the Lions?
I'm hopeful. I'm back to being an optimistic Broncos fan. Zach put up a really fun probability ranking, a nice little spreadsheet, because of course he did that nerd. We call him the stats guy for a reason. If you go on over to Zach Seegers, Zach_Seegers over on Twitter, you'll be able to see exactly what I'm referencing. But in general sense, the Broncos don't necessarily have to win this game, but I think they could. My only cause for concern here is when you look at the overall rankings for Detroit's offense, that's third in total yards, and the Denver Broncos defense in total yards is 30th in the NFL. You go, well, that matchup is a little bit squirmy there. That's what's posing a little bit of an issue for me. That in general sense, I think the Broncos secondary can be lights out against a Jared Goff that just needs to be equalized. The Denver Broncos defense has been shown to be that equalizer in a lot of potentially efficient offenses. And so the Broncos going into this game have a really great opportunity to take Goff out of his game and make the Lions win with their run game, which we've seen how that works out a lot. You either run a ton on the Denver Broncos or you don't run at all. So this has the potential to go very violently in one direction, and that's what I'm worried about in this game. But yes, I think it's completely winnable. I think the Lions are starting to falter a little bit. They're starting to cool down right as the Broncos are heating up, and the momentum is on a tremendous case right now. They've won they've won 6 of their last 7. Why not toss this one in there? I don't think they should have lost to the Texans. Why should they lose to the Lions? I like Zach's point there about the spread differential and how really the Lions shouldn't be as favored as much as they are. I like that juice on the line for the Broncos money line. I think I'll take that either way.
And just to really quick ease some of Bree's concerns, because I agree. Look at that, and it's, oh my God, the Broncos are the 30th defense and the Lions are the 3rd offense. This is a horrible mismatch. But again, The Dolphins game where the Broncos gave up more yards than anyone in NFL history is doing so much lifting there. And the Lions' early season offensive performances is doing so much lifting for them. Again, over the last month and a half, 6 weeks of football, we're 14 weeks into the season. It's almost half our sample size. The Lions are 10th as an offense in EPA per play. The Broncos are 4th as a defense in terms of EPA per play. And that is definitely buoyed by their insane turnover luck. That's going to be worth a lot of EPA points. But they're still very good in success rate. They're 11th in success rate, which is more like down to down stability. They are a good defense, and the Lions are no longer an elite offense. I think they're a good offense. And then I think you got a good offense in the Broncos against a horrific defense in the Lions. I feel good about the Broncos. The Lions have been playing their worst football at the worst point in time, and the Broncos are playing their best football at the best point in time.
Yeah.
Look at the Broncos. I just want to point out, you both have been saying a lot over on Let's Talk Broncos that you just don't think the turnovers are sustainable. And here we are in week 14. They look pretty sustainable, guys. It's looking pretty good for the Broncos there.
It is. I mean, they're not getting as much, Brie, but it is the defense without question is taking a massive step up. Like, there's no question about it. And you got that right for sure. You know what's interesting about this whole thing about the Lions offense? I can't for the life of me figure out if Jared Goff is good or not. I can't figure it out. Every single week I'm seeing a different Jared Goff. For the first half of the week, like, I draft him in fantasy every year because it feels like he's just the guy that's supposed to be bad but puts up good fantasy numbers every year. And in this Lions offense with a great supporting system, great offensive line, great wide receivers, Jared Goff does put up numbers. I just can't figure out if he's a very good quarterback. Will, should the Broncos be worried about Jared Goff, or are we kind of just in recent weeks seeing the actual version of Jared Goff?
Yeah, I think this kind of happens. It happened in LA at least, where you see him slow down at the end of the year, and this would be such this would be really a clear-cut game to me if Denver was playing at home, and they had the advantage of not just the fans but being outdoors, because everybody talks about Kenny Pickett's hands, but Jared Goff's got some tiny mitts too, and that really shows up when you're playing late in the season outdoors. But no, he's volatile, and like, so is the Lions offense. Like, you look at the last 4 games, that game where they had to come back and beat Chicago at home, 4 turnovers. They lose on Thanksgiving Day to Green Bay, 3 turnovers, no turnovers against the Saints. No kidding, that's a win. And then against the Bears last week, 3 more turnovers. So, I mean, you're looking at a very opportunistic defense. Say what you will about turnovers and whether they're sustainable or not. I just think some defenses are better at taking the ball away, and some defenses are more aggressive, and they're kind of a bend but don't break kind of style. And that's sort of what we're seeing in Denver. And then you've got offenses that, are just play fast and loose with the football. And I think the one thing that worries me about Jared Goff is if the Broncos get out to a quick lead, which I think is really imperative in winning this game, I don't have a lot of confidence in the Lions being one-dimensional and trying to throw back into this game, because that's, I think, where the turnovers happen. If the Lions get off to a quick lead, they're just going to pound the ball, and I think Detroit has a major advantage in the trenches. And obviously they have that 2-headed monster in David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. So that's kind of what frightens me. But Jared Goff, not so much.
Yeah, I fully agree. The run game is what frightens me. I think you saw that as a vulnerability in this Broncos defense. And I think they've done a good job kind of avoiding those situations so far. But I also don't think it's coincidence the one loss they've had on this run is the one where they found themselves in a negative game script. The Lions aren't really made to play from behind. Neither are the Broncos. I think even less so. Their offense is a lot less explosive. The Lions, only 2 wins in a recent stretch are because of kind of miraculous comebacks. Their comeback against the Saints and then their comeback against the Bears. And that's kind of what I'm getting at with the Lions. Their recent performances here. They get mollywopped by the Baltimore Ravens 38-6, beat the Raiders 26-14, narrowly eke one out against the Chargers 41-38, have to have a miraculous comeback to beat the Bears at home, lose to the Packers pretty bad on Thanksgiving, another miraculous comeback to beat the Saints, and then they lose to the Bears by 2 touchdowns. The fact that they're a top 4 seed in the NFC is carried entirely by the start of the season when they looked great. And also, they haven't beaten a team really even in the hunt of the playoffs. Their most impressive, their only wins against playoff teams are their 14-point win over the Falcons, their 14-point win over the Bucks, and their 5-point win over the Saints. And those 3 teams are only maybe playoff teams because the NFC South is an absolute dumpster fire. Outside of that, it's the win over the Chiefs. That's all they got. And it was a 1-point win over the Chiefs that, again, some drops really buoyed them. Are the Lions good? Yes. I don't think they are much better than the Chargers or much better than the Raiders or much better than the Patriots.
They're much better than the Chargers. They are.
Not at this point in the season. They just played the Chargers and won by 3 points.
Yeah, but the Chargers are different now than they were then.
I mean, now that they don't have Herbert, but
they don't have anything anymore. Like, they barely have anything.
They weren't that different of a spot when they played, though.
Keenan Allen's out now for the Thursday night game.
Lee McNeil's out for but I mean, I don't know.
Why are you completely disregarding Jared Goff as a quarterback in general is my question. Are you quieting me down before I get elevated about sticking up for Jared Goff? It feels like a dangerous position to put yourself in. Like, you go in there going, well, Kirk Cousins isn't much of anything. And then he goes out there and absolutely rips you to shreds. There's a reason that the offense has as many points as they do. But I agree that I think that if the defense can step in, maybe limit some of those 3rd down conversions. Speaking of 3rd downs, if the Broncos can kind of maintain their upward trajectory there, the game won't rely solely on the defense, and I think that'll just spell a better position. I just think there's the opportunity for the Broncos to sort of shoot themselves in the foot here, and although maybe the Lions aren't the scariest team they have to face, they've already run the gauntlet. They've survived thus far. In fact, they ended a streak on the butt end of that one. I think the Broncos are capable of a lot more here, and it just really is a way the ball bounces here on Saturday. I know I said Sunday. Sorry, guys, I was in a rush today. I'm a little flustered. But the idea is that you asked first and foremost about Jared Goff. Jared Goffel has been referenced before, but if you're thinking about the idea that he can't put one on you, that's just a dangerous notion to kind of lean into. He's one of the most on target and accurate quarterbacks of this season, and he's also got one of the faster release times. If the Broncos defense isn't on their game, which we expect them to be, we know that their ceiling is here, but if they perform over on this below average realm, then we could just see it get really ugly really quick, and I don't want to see that. I have a lot of optimism, but I'm always thinking about what the hell can go wrong when we least need it to.
Yeah, I mean, I think rightfully so. I would say the weakness in Jared Goff's game is, obviously, as Will said, the cold weather. Then I would also say, Vance Joseph, continue to dial up the blitz, man. Continue to get that going, because Jared Goff gets flustered back there when you get in his lap. And we saw it last week against the Chargers. Like, Vance had it cooking the blitz. Like I said, PJ Locke, 3 sacks in 3 weeks. Safeties aren't usually pass rushers. So I think that's a big thing. And before we sign out, guys, I want to ask you one last question, maybe a little more quick fire than that. Is this a must-win game in your opinion? Will, we'll start off with you.
Yeah. I think so. There's a scenario where the Broncos can go 11-6 and still miss the playoffs if the Bills win out, which the Bills are the Bills. They can win any game they're in. There's no margin for error if you want to be serious about making a playoff run. So absolutely, must-win game.
All right, Bree, what do you think?
I honestly cannot believe we're actually having this conversation. It feels a little surreal. It's a little uncanny valley as I stare at all of you saying, are we really talking about the potential of a Broncos playoff run? Not only that, but to lead the AFC West. This doesn't even feel like the same plain atmosphere environment, but it's an absolute must win. And I don't care about the probability if they go ahead and they win outright within the division. That looks pretty good. It's still too close for comfort, and it's basically a coin flip at that point. They need as many wins as they can rack up. Winning out for the rest of the season seems a little scary and a little bit dodgy, but I think it would be absolutely worthwhile for the momentum going forward, because this Denver Broncos team, what has shown exactly what happens when they're on a hot streak and they ride that hot hand. A win is exactly that. It keeps the momentum rolling.
There you go. I like it. Zach, what do you think? Must win game or no?
I'm saying, yeah, I think it is a must win. Technically, if the Broncos go 3-1, they've got a great chance of making the playoffs. That said, you look at the 16 possible outcomes for the season. There's 16 different combinations of wins and losses from here until the end that could occur. Of those 16, 5 right now are more than likely to result with the Broncos playing in the playoffs. One of those 5 involves a Lions loss. 4 of those 5 involve a Lions win. If you lose to the Lions, you pretty much have to win out the rest of the way. That's kind of the only likely reality that gets the Denver Broncos in the playoffs at that point. You lose this week, every game from here on out is a playoff game. So yeah, must win. And you made a point before you asked the question, Joey, and I have an incredible stat for it, so I got to throw it out there. Jared Goff, when not blitzed, 4th best passer rating in the NFL. Jared Goff, when blitzed, 22nd best passer rating in the NFL. Huge drop. So absolutely got to bring the heat there. He is what a 2004 Masshead thinks Peyton Manning was. Can't handle late season, can't handle the cold. He needs to play in his dome.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the key. If Van Joseph could dial it up, the Broncos have a good shot at winning this game. I'm also going to say, yes, this is a must win. Going back to early in the season, man, you wish that the Broncos got a win against the Raiders week 1 or the Commanders or the Jets. One of those teams right now, it would give the Broncos a lot more leeway heading into the playoffs. But guys, I think that's all for today's show. Make sure you are following Let's Talk Broncos, subscribing to that. We'll give the people an update on what you guys have going on at That's Good Broncos.
We just dropped power rankings. So take a look at where the Broncos are currently standing in our very serious, well-researched power rankings. And then after the game on Saturday, we'll do a recap podcast, then we'll do a recap video, God willing. We didn't do one this week. We did one on the Vikings Raiders 3-0 game, but hopefully we get something interesting to edit on Saturday.
Make sure you guys are going to do that. I love obviously Perna and Will. I love their content together. So make sure you guys are going to go listen to everything they're doing. Make sure you guys are listening to Let's Talk Broncos. Make sure you're subscribing. Until next time, guys, go Broncos.